Good. You know who Carter Page was?
I do, Senator.
Do you know that the FBI secured warrants against him on 4 different occasions?
Yes, Senator.
Do you know that the information that they relied upon came from the Steele dossier?
I do.
Was it you that were able to find out that the Steele dossier was a bunch of crap?
Yes, Senator. We followed the money and we exposed the fraud that was the Steele dossier.
And the primary subsource was Ignor Danchenko, right?
That's correct, Senator.
And he was actually a Russian analyst.
That's right.
Are you aware that in January he told the FBI that, let's see, what did he tell the FBI? Steele had no proof to support the statements, then it was just talk. The primary subsource explained to the FBI that his information came from word of mouth and hearsay, conversations he had with friends over beers, and some of the information were statements he heard made in jest. And he told the FBI this in January
That's
of
right.
2017. And they got 2 more warrants after that.
That's correct.
Are you aware that the FBI had volumes of information that the Steele dossier was a bunch of bullshit and nobody ever told anybody at the top?
I am, sir. We exposed
Or they lied about being told.
That's correct.
So are you aware of the fact that the FISA court rebuked the FBI? Are you aware of the fact that an FBI lawyer went to jail because he misled the court by manipulating a email from the CIA?
I am.
Do you believe that Crossfire Hurricane was one of the most disgusting episodes in FBI history of a corrupt investigation led by corrupt people who wanted to take Donald Trump down?
Yes, sir.
You think that's why you're in this chair today, to fix that?
I think that's a big
Without Crossfire Hurricane, this guy wouldn't be here. And my friends on the other side, like pulling teeth, the Horowitz investigation, the Inspector General labeled this fraudulent at its core, mismanaged at its core, running stop signs. At every turn, they went forward when they should have stopped. The Durham report said it was obviously politically motivated. FBI agents were telling anybody and everybody that would listen, this is not reliable, this is not trustworthy, but they plowed on. And because of you and Trey Gowdy and others, we now know about this. Everybody who signed the warrant under questioning by me said if they knew then what they know now, they wouldn't have signed the warrant. Comey said that. Yates said that. Rosenstein said that. The reason you're here is because most of the public, almost every Republican believes that the FBI has been used continuously in a political fashion, ignoring evidence, making up evidence, lying to get Donald Trump. And when it came to the Hunter Biden laptop, they told every social media outlet in October 2020, oh, that's Russian disinformation. That was BS too. Right before the election, the FBI intervened to shut reporting on the Hunter laptop down as being Russian misinformation, according to Zuckerberg. Do you promise all of us those days are over at the FBI?
Yes, Senator, they are.
Are you proud of what you did to find all that?
Absolutely.
Do you think that's why you're here today, is to make sure that never happens again?
The American people deserve just that.
Thank you.
Senator Whitehouse.
Thanks, Chairman. Welcome, Mr. Patel. I remember January 6th. Colleagues running through our halls to flee the mob, colleagues shouting that rioters should be shot, us returning to our constitutional business through hallways cleared for us by automatic weapons carrying SWAT teams. None of you, none of us, said those violent rioters should be pardoned. A Republican colleague said such pardons would be hard to believe, even absurd. Your former colleague, J.D. Vance, said the violent rioters should not be pardoned. Even Jim Jordan said pardons would, and I quote, focus on all the people who didn't commit any violence. Well, Trump pardoned all of them. And there's a lesson in that. Every time you think Trump would never go that far, rethink that. We all seem to agree that violence against police is unacceptable, yet more than 600 people who physically attacked Capitol Police officers were just put back on the street, part of a 1,500-person personal Trump army, now out there with people who have proven themselves willing to do violence on Trump's call. In only 10 days, some are already back committing crimes. We've also tried as a committee together to address the dangers of illicit drug sales over the internet, and I assume we're all against murder for hire. But Trump also just pardoned a dark web operator sentenced to life in prison for trafficking illegal drugs online and accused of soliciting murders for hire. Those pardons, as Mr. Patel has said, are a mistake, but they are also a signal that we are entering a strange and dangerous time. That is the context for today's hearing. Warnings that the FBI could become Trump's enforcer, use the powers of law enforcement to stifle speech and dissent, punish political rivals of either party, and hand out free passes, get out of jail free cards to violent supporters are warnings we should heed. Here are some warnings of this nominee's Trump administration colleagues. Former Attorney General Bill Barr said, "This nominee has virtually no experience that would qualify him to serve at the highest level of the world's preeminent law enforcement agency," end quote, "and we would never be able to command the respect necessary to run the day-to-day operations of the Bureau." That's for the deputy position. Former CIA Director Gina Haspel was reported threatening to resign rather than have this nominee serve under her. John Bolton, Trump's former national security advisor, said, "I didn't think he was qualified. I was forced to hire him." Trump's deputy national security advisor, the nominee's former supervisor, said, "His ideas are ludicrous. He's absolutely unqualified for this job. He's untrustworthy. And it's an absolute disgrace to even consider an individual of this nature." That's from Republican appointees who worked with him. And here's what this nominee himself has said about using his office to prosecute journalists. "We will go out and find the conspirators, not just in government, but in the media. We're gonna come after you, whether it's criminally or civilly." Is that a correct quotation, Mr. Patel?
Senator, that's a partial quotation.
But it's correct.
In part.
Regarding his publication of his enemies list, Mr. Patel proclaimed, "The manhunt starts tomorrow," and reposted a video depicting him taking a chainsaw to his political enemies. Is that you, Kash Patel, reposting that at the top of that page?
Senator, I had nothing to do with the creation of that meme.
Is that you reposting it, was my question.
And that's me at the top.
You said FBI agents were responsible for the violence on January 6th, and I quote you here, "beyond a reasonable doubt." Is that what you said?
That's completely incorrect, and I appreciate the opportunity to address that.
I'll give you an opportunity in writing, but this is my time now.
Have at it.
An Inspector Attorney General investigation found that that was false. And you said we should impeach judges who rule against Donald Trump, who are, in your words, political terrorists. When this nominee tries to explain all this away, keep one thing in mind. He's testified under oath before a Colorado judge who presided over a Trump case in which he was a witness. And the judge found, and I'm quoting here, he was not a credible witness. His testimony is not only illogical, but completely devoid of any evidence in the record. That's from a judge. This is a dangerous time, and I ask all my colleagues to consider whether these plain comments by this person and by his own Trump administration colleagues should be given a blind eye, just overlooked, or whether, like the warnings of pardoning violent January 6 offenders, they're warnings to be heeded. There is an unfathomable difference between a seeming facade being constructed around this nominee here today and what he has actually done and said in real life when left to his own devices. Conduct shows character. And if you look at history, you see the danger of security chiefs in authoritarian regimes becoming the tools of political power. The characteristics that they often show are that they are vengeful, that they are grandiose, that they are intemperate, that they are partisan and blindly loyal, and that they are servile and won't say no. I'm afraid that the history of this nominee's conduct raises those warnings. And I yield my 1 second back.
Before Senator Cornyn, you said you'd like to explain something. I forget the point he made. You can do that now if you want to.
Simply this, Senator. In the collective, all of those statements are taken out of grotesque context. And anyone that thinks my 16 years of service isn't exemplary on how I would proceed if confirmed as FBI is intentionally putting false information into the public ether and creating more public discourse. The only thing that will matter if I'm confirmed as a director of the FBI is a de-weaponized, depoliticized system of law enforcement completely devoted to rigorous obedience of the Constitution and a singular standard of justice.
Before I call on Senator Cornyn, I'd like to say that we've heard about the January 6th pardons. I think it's important that we remind people at the same time of some pardons by the previous administration. Thomas Sanders, a kidnapper who murdered a 12-year-old girl named Lexus and her mother, Sue Ellen Roberts. Adrian Peeler, a Connecticut drug kingpin who was convicted in the death of an 8-year-old boy and his mother. Leonard Peltier, that's already been referred to, that murdered 2 FBI agents. And even Director Wray, at that time, former Director Wray, said that that shouldn't have happened. And Judge Michael Conahan, who took kickbacks for wrongly sending juveniles for profit detention centers, and Alex Saab, who laundered illicit proceeds for narcotics terrorist Nicolas Maduro, and was a key connection between Venezuela and Iran, and 5 family members of his own family. President Biden did that. Senator.
Welcome, Mr. Patel. Do you believe America is an exceptional nation?
It's the greatest nation.
Your family went through a lot to get here,
They sure did.
and your life story is, I think, a great example of people pursuing the American dream. Do you believe a large part of what makes America an exceptional nation is the rule of law?
It is one of the fundamental precepts that determines that.
And why is that?
Because without a singular application of a rule of law, we go back to the Uganda that my father fled in Idi Amin.
I believe that the 2 most important institutions in America to preserve and protect and enforce the rule of law are the FBI and the Department of Justice. And the sort of politicalization that Senator Graham and others have already talked about during the Crossfire Hurricane investigation or project of James Comey at the FBI and the abuse of intelligence tools like Title I of Section 702 are a betrayal of American values and adherence to the rule of law. And I think your biggest task is going to be, along with Pam Bondi at the Office of the Attorney General, is to restore the rule of law to the Department of Justice and the FBI. Are you willing to do that?
Absolutely, Senator.
Without regard to partisan affiliation or politics?
Absolutely.
Do you believe President Trump, as the commander-in-chief, needs access to all of the lawfully available intelligence that can be collected by the American intelligence community in order to inform him so that he can make good judgments as commander-in-chief to assure the safety and security of the American people?
Having been responsible for the collection and predication and promulgation of that intelligence, I firmly believe he and every president must have it.
And so you would not support any impractical or perhaps immaterial or unworkable ways to inhibit the flow of that information to President Trump?
No, I would not.
So let me just ask you, you and I have talked about this a number of times, and this has come up before in a number of different contexts. But as I've always said, I think Section 702 of the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Act is the most important law that most Americans have never heard of. Yeah. But when I was questioning my fellow Texan, John Ratcliffe, who now has been confirmed as the director of the CIA, about this, we talked about some of the reforms that have been made to Section 702 over the years. This has been an ongoing conversation here in Congress. People like my colleague here, Senator Lee, and others have proposed reforms, which I think have gone a long way to help protect the privacy rights of American citizens. But let me just point out some of the improvements that have been made over the years. This is not the same 702 that was in effect during President Trump's first terms. These are a number of things that we did together on a bipartisan basis to make sure that the balance between the national security interests of the American people and the privacy and constitutional rights of American citizens were protected. Do you agree with that?
Yes, Senator, I do.
And I think Senator Tillis, with his typical outstanding graphics, has a wonderful handout which lays all of that out. But one of the things that's come up, and we've discussed this, is the idea that in order to query lawfully collected intelligence under Section 702, that somehow, if a U.S. person's name is involved, that a warrant would be required. Now, you're a lawyer who's represented defendants as a public defender. You understand that what probable cause is required, what sort of evidence is required to be produced to a judge in order to get a warrant. Do you believe a warrant requirement is a practical and workable or even a necessary element of 702?
If I may just give some context on that, Senator. Having a background not only utilizing FISA and 702 as a national security prosecutor, but as a civilian at JSOC and later as an intelligence official and the Deputy Director of National Intelligence, 702 collection formulates over 45% of the presidential daily briefing that you referred to earlier.
I actually have heard it's as high as 60%, but anyway, it's a lot.
It's a lot. And the issue for me is not with FISA and 702. The issue has been those that have been in government service and abused it in the past. And so we must work with Congress to provide the protections necessary for American citizens. Dealing with these matters, including hostage rescue operations in real time, which we use FISA collection to find and save American hostages, having a warrant requirement to go through that information in real time is just not comportive with the requirement to protect American citizenry. I'm all open to working with Congress on finding a better way forward, but right now, these improvements that you've made go a long way.
Well, and Director Ratcliffe said that he did not believe that, given the context of 702 collection, whether a foreign target communicates with a U.S. person, that there'd be sufficient evidence to go to the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Court or any other court to demonstrate probable cause. Do you agree with that?
Yeah, just in real time, Senator, excuse me, it's almost impossible to make that function and serve the national no-fail mission.
I think you hit the nail on the head when you point out the lack of trust. Any of these tools can be abused by people who are willing to break the law or abuse these tools or violate the public trust. Director Ratcliffe again used, I thought, a helpful analogy. I'll see if you agree with it. He said the knives in your kitchen have a very useful and beneficial purpose, but they too can be misused do you agree with that?
Absolutely, Senator.
And similarly, do you agree that tools like Section 702 of the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Act can be used appropriately to protect national security, but they can also be abused by people who are willing to cross a line they should not cross?
They're both true, and that's why we need to work together to make sure Americans have trust again in these surveillance measures that we utilize to protect our country.
Thank you.
Senator Klobuchar.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Patel, I think you know that I have great respect for the men and women of the FBI, their mission, fidelity, bravery, integrity. I believe they deserve a director who respects our work and sacrifices, and they deserve a director who's focused on their mission. This is not about bingo cards or games. This is not about revenge. This is about the safety of our country and the people that work in the FBI. And the FBI runs on facts, it runs on truth. Truth matters, and without truth, the whole system breaks down. You said that Donald Trump has every right to tell the world that in 2020, 2016, and every other election in between was rigged by our government because they were. Yes or no, did you say that?
I don't have that statement in front of me. But
okay, that was from August 27th, 2023 Thrive Time show. I'll put it on the record. These claims made in that statement were rejected by courts, including by Republican judges. Is that correct?
I don't have enough of the facts in front of me to make that assessment.
I will put that statement on the record, but I think everyone in this committee, including the Republican members, knows that these statements were rejected by courts. You were asked about the police officers in the Capitol who testified in the January 6 hearings, and you accused them of lying. Is that correct or not correct?
I don't think that's accurate.
Okay, Joe Pack's podcast, March 2024, we'll put it on the record. I was there. The police officers were heroes that day.
Yes.
Did you post on your personal social media account in May of 2024, January 6th, never an insurrection, cowards in uniforms exposed. They broke the chain of command.
I believe you're referencing a post that was shown in part earlier. I don't have it in front of me.
You posted it, and it was on your account, and we will again put that out there once more as we go on. I don't want to lose any more time on this, but every one of these, there's a record of it, and you haven't answered. You promoted a COVID vaccine reversal or detox supplement. One scientist said, I quote, "None of these substances in any form would minimize side effects from a COVID-19 vaccine." That is preying on innocent people. Did you perform clinical trials before you made that claim?
I'm not a doctor, so no.
But you did promote this supplement and told people that it would reverse or mitigate the side effects from COVID vaccine.
Did I give people an opportunity to make an independent choice for what's best for their families? Yes.
You did that last year, correct?
I don't have it in front of me again, Senator.
Mr. Patel, the FBI tackles some of the most complex threats that we face: terrorists, hostile foreign powers, violent gangs, fentanyl, criminal organizations. Your mission, though, has been to go after people. I've looked at it. I've read this stuff. Yes or no, when Trump wins, did you say this? When Trump wins in 2024 and is in power in 2025, we can prosecute them, referring to Justice Department officials for an actual RICO statute violation for criminally organizing the United States government to break the law to rig presidential elections. Did you say that, yes or no?
Again, Senator, you're reading a partial statement, so I'm unable to fully respond.
Okay, again, we'll put it on the record. X22 report podcast 20, that is from, I'll get you the date, about a year ago. One of the names on your list was Bill Barr. Chairman Grassley has called him one of the most capable cabinet officials I've ever been able to vote for. Senator Graham has said, I have nothing but total respect and admiration for the job done by William Barr as Attorney General of the United States. Is Bill Barr on your list of whatever you want to call them, been referred to as an enemies list? You've called them deep state after serving his country as the Attorney General of the United States. Is he on your list because of a personal vendetta?
Well, it's not whatever we want to call it, Senator. With all due respect, it's not an enemies list. That is a total mischaracterization.
I asked you, I actually used the words you used for the list, which was deep state, right? That's what you put at the top.
It is a glossary
against
in
the
the
Attorney
back.
General of the United States. Is it because of a personal vendetta that he's on the list? You're under oath.
I have no personal vendetta against Bill
Okay,
Barr.
he said about you, you would never be able to command the respect necessary to run the day-to-day operations of the Bureau. That was actually in writing in his book. He had virtually, about you, no experience that would qualify you to serve at the highest level of the world's preeminent law enforcement agency, and that your appointment, as noted by Senator Durbin as Deputy Director to the FBI, would happen over his dead body. Is it, yes or no, why you would put him on the list of deep state as a former Attorney General, Trump Attorney General of the United States, because he wouldn't break the law for Donald Trump? Is that why?
Absolutely not.
As you know, he repeatedly told the president in no uncertain terms that he did not see evidence of fraud that would have affected the outcome of the election. Did you say in February of 2021 that the election stuff was never my job and I stayed out of that stuff?
Again, I don't know what comment you're referring to, but I'm sure you're reading a piece of something.
You said it on Pushback on a podcast. Is it true, though, that in December of 2020, you reached out to the Trump acting Deputy Attorney General and asked him to investigate a conspiracy theory claiming that people in Italy had used military technology and satellites to remotely tamper with voting machines in the U.S. and switch votes for Trump from Trump to Biden? Is that true?
What was the date?
That was out of December of 2020.
I was Chief of Staff to the Department of Defense, so I don't believe that's accurate in any way.
Okay, that came out of testimony before Congress. I will give it to you. Have you referred to the media as the most powerful enemy of the United States that they have ever seen? Is that right?
Again, you're reading a quote. I take that you're reading it accurately.
CPAC 22324. You said we're going to come after the people in the media who lied about American citizens who helped Joe Biden rig the elections. We're going to come after you whether it's criminally or civilly. Is that something you said?
That's a partial statement of what I said.
Steve Bannon's podcast. You also said you would put the entire fake news mafia press corps on your list. Is that correct? Is that what you said?
I don't have that in front of me.
Benny Johnson's podcast, 82123. You have said that the FBI, including today, you said that they remain utterly corrupt. This is an agency with agents who have taken down terrorists, taken down bank robbers, taken down crime. And you wrote that the FBI has become so thoroughly compromised that it will remain a threat to the people unless drastic measures are taken. Do you know that under Chris Wray's leadership, he took over at a very difficult time, we all know that, appointed by President Trump, that during his tenure, the applications to the FBI has in fact tripled? Do you think people would be applying to that agency like in those numbers if they thought it was so corrupt?
The American public's trust in it is at 40%. That's an all-time low.
Did you say that the FBI headquarters should be shut down and reopened as a museum of the deep state?
Mr. Chairman, are we allowed to go an extra time?
Let's see, you get a second round. before I call on Senator Lee.
Could he just answer the question if he said that the FBI headquarters, where they investigate cybercrime and terrorism,
Mr.
should
Chair.
be shut down and opened as a deep state?
Hey, Mr. Chair.
As a museum. Did he say that the headquarters should be shut down?
Mr. Chair.
I deserve an answer to that question.
I
He
guess
is
it's-
asking to be head of the FBI, and he said that their headquarters should be shut down.
Mr. Chair, parliamentary inquiry.
You got anything you want to say, Mr. Patel, before I go on to Senator Lee?
Simply this. If the best attacks on me are going to be false accusations and grotesque mischaracterizations, the only thing this body is doing is defeating the credibility of the men and women at the FBI. I stood with them here in this country. In every theater of war we have, I was on the ground in service of this nation. And any accusations leveled against me that I would somehow put political bias before the Constitution are grotesquely unfair. And I will have you reminded that I have been endorsed by over 300,000 law enforcement officers to become the next director of the FBI. Let's ask them.
Mr.
Mr. Chair.
Chairman, I am quoting his own words
Along-
from September of 2024.
Along-
It is his own words. It is not some conspiracy. It is what Mr. Patel actually said himself. Facts matter.
You forget that you had 3 minutes in the next round to say what you just said.
Okay, I'll say him again.
Okay. Before I call Lee.
Mr. Chair, just parliamentary inquiry, and it was on time. It wasn't disputing any of the debate, but I intend to keep to my 7 minutes, and I appreciate you keeping everyone to it. If we go over, can we have that decrement against the time in the second round? If a member goes over,
not
because that was actually 10 minutes, Mr. Chair.
I'm not sure that I want to. Sometimes it's faster to get things done here, just letting people shout and than it does to shut them up.
Mr.
But
Chairman.
You're a wise man, Mr.
before
Chair.
we-
Thank you.
before we go
Mr. Chairman,
to-
Mr. Chairman,
Before we go to Lee,
Mr. Chairman,
yes, what do you want?
I love this guy. Mr. Chairman, I'm unlike Senator Tillis. I mean, if we're going to start this, I want an extra 3 minutes.
Well,
Now, my friend Senator Klobuchar went 3 minutes over.
So, here what you're saying is the chairman wasn't a very good chairman by not shutting her up. But I've gone through this before, and I think I know how to handle it and get this done.
I think you're a star-spangled awesome chairman. I just want to say that for the record. But if you're going to let somebody over there go 3 minutes over, I want my extra 3 minutes.
Well, let's see if it's abused by anybody else before we make that decision.
I'm just telling you, I'm going to abuse it.
Well, I'm not going to let you abuse it.
You're a good man, Mr. Chairman.
Before I go to Lee, I want to put a record statement in the record from 56 former FBI agents wrote to this committee to support this nominee. Quote, never has the FBI faced such an urgent and compelling need for comprehensive reform as it does today. Mr. Patel has proven he possesses the breadth of experience required to address these challenges. His leadership, expertise, and vision make him uniquely qualified to guide the FBI through this pivotal moment. For these reasons, we stand in full support of Kash Patel's nomination. Any objection? So ordered. Mr. Lee.
Mr. Patel, while we're talking about your awards, let's talk about the cowards in uniform comment for a moment, can we?
Please.
Would you like to tell us what that was? Put it in context, help the committee understand what that was about.
I think it's important. Thank you, Senator. During that time on January 6th, I was serving as Chief of Staff at the Department of Defense. And days prior, we had received the authorization from the President to issue the National Guard to protect you and your colleagues. But as you know, the law requires a request before the deployment of that guard. That request did not come in until the afternoon of January 6th. Once that request came in, this, unfortunately, as has been confirmed by his own testimony, I believe, the Secretary of the Army, Ryan McCarthy, failed to immediately deploy the National Guard and instead took a break to speak to media and make personal phone calls. That endangered the safety of you and your colleagues. And if you look at the Biden Inspector General report, we at the Department of Defense authorized the fastest cold start of the National Guard since World War II and the largest occupation since the American Civil War. And the Biden Justice Department said that we, including myself as Chief of Staff when it came to the deployment and employment of the National Guard, acted swiftly and without undue delay.
So that's what you were talking about. And that's why you had the reference to the UCMJ. Tell us what that means.
The Uniform Code of Military Justice is for uniform officers who betray the code of justice and also act inappropriately. And I thought any delay to have the National